Okay, welcome. Good evening, whatever time of day it is where you are. This is new on Netflix UK, an entirely unofficial podcast where each month we take a look at the new stuff that's out on Netflix. Rob, what are we looking at this month?
Well, Robbie, we have 4 different things today. We've got Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, Fyre, the greatest party that never happened, Close, and Carmen Sandiago.
Okay, so let's start with a clip from Marie Kondo.
They have so much stuff.
It's a never-ending battle to fight the clutter.
With the baby coming, we got to get our stuff in order.
We had to downsize from a 4-story house to a 2-bedroom apartment.
I lost my husband. I don't know that I have everything it takes to get rid of his belongings.
Hello, I'm Marie Kondo. 私のミッションは片付けによって
So, Tidying Up with Marie Kondo. I mean, if you haven't heard of this already, you've probably been living under a rock a little bit. So the concept of Tidying Up with Marie Kondo is that Marie Kondo, who is a Japanese declutterer, I don't know what her job title is, but I will go with declutterer, attempts to tidy up Americans' homes, basically. She goes to a lot of people who have, they haven't necessarily got a hoarding problem, but they have got an awful lot of stuff in their houses and attempts to kind of tidy them up. And so it's a fascinating concept, I suppose. It's kind of a very interesting sort of attempt to kind of sort of question the consumerism latent within American society. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed watching it, not because I thought it was a masterful, brilliant reality show, but because I just really like Marie Kondo. I think she's just a really nice person who is trying to make people's lives better. So the first episode is interesting. The family is called the Friend family. They have someone coming to do their laundry, and the guy works 60 hours a week. Seemingly his wife just stays at home and looks after the kids. So it's a pretty old-fashioned sort of view of the sort of nuclear family. It's one of those things where you just think, with just a little bit of sort of perspective, you can change quite a lot. And Marie comes in and, greets them all. I mean, it seems to be spent so much time during this program greeting people, just coming to their house and greeting them and giving them a hug, and saying hello. And even, greeting the house itself. That's part of the practice that she uses. Is like, I've read somewhere this is to do with, Japanese ancient religion like Shinto or something like that. And she basically comes and greets the house and is silent, and everyone appreciates the house they live in. And then obviously she gets into the whole decluttering thing, which is bringing 5 different categories of things out into the open. You pile them up into one big pile, and then you look at each one and decide whether it sparks joy. And then you place the things that don't spark joy to one side and the things that do spark joy to another side. I love this idea. I mean, is it just me? Like, this is basically an easy way.
It's not just you. This is it. This seems to have been something that people have taken hold of. I saw a video you put on Facebook, Rob, of you trying this out. You seem quite into it.
I am very into it. But not. I mean, so the criticism she's had is because she sort of says that books particularly is the big criticism. I think do they spark joy? No, get rid of them. As if like books are sort of like almost a consumer good, like clothes. Like most people would sort of recognize that clothes are a fairly functional thing, whereas books are a sort of thing about ideas and, self-development and all those kind of ideas. And so the idea that you should just discard books just because they don't spark joy isn't to be kind of condoned. But actually, all it really comes down to is the fact that even if something isn't your favorite book ever, you still might want to discard it. You still might want to keep it because it has something that is valuable to you in it. So I don't. This whole like kind of controversy, I think, is a bit over the top. What is great about the show is that she is obviously a neat freak, like a lot of people in the world, and that's a good thing because we need people who are tidy and able to kind of show people how to organize things. But it's both. Like, it appeals to sort of 2 sections of society that are big. People love cheesy reality shows, but they also love the idea that they could improve their lives in some way. And so that's my best description of tidying up with Marie Kondo. Is it's neat cheese.
Neat cheese. I mean, I always find a wee bit of irony in that I feel a lot of self-help books, they've got something valuable to say, but it could more or less be summed up in something the size of the leaflet that gets put through your door by a pizza company. Do you know what I mean? Like the key points. And we had one, it was a parenting one, and it was called something like, Simple Lives or something like that. Or happy kids, calm parents. It's that sort of thing. Now, the title of the book basically tells you everything you need to know. But this sort of clutter-free, simple existence took them sort of 300 pages to explain. And I somehow see the same there in Marie Kondo's book.
She's not really doing anything that's extraordinary. It's remarkable that they've given her a show just to do this, because she does the same thing in every episode. I've watched 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think it does. It's diminishing returns, isn't it, a bit?
Yeah, completely. But I mean, if you watch it a few times, that's the whole. I think the whole point isn't. It's a meme, really, isn't it? It's like basically it's something repeatable. Is that everyone, once you've seen a couple of episodes of it, can understand what the idea of it is. And so it's like any kind of, it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, let's say, like as a quiz show. Everyone kind of gets it after 2 episodes or 1 or 2 episodes. They understand the concept, and so they can go back and rewatch it, and it's sort of like a familiar friend. And it's not that I, love these kind of programs at all, but this particular sort of juxtaposition of showing up American society as the horrible sort of let's all buy as much stuff as we can idea, with just someone who's very simple, very friendly, very bubbly, will just come in and just give you a small bit of advice. And it's tiny. All she says is basically put things in order. It just makes me a little bit happier that there's some good in the world, maybe.
Well, I'm pleased. So the regular listener to this podcast, he or she will know that we always do a poetic review. And I've been working on a title for this, Rob. At the moment, the best I've got is Poetry in Motion Pictures.
Okay.
I was quite pleased with. The other option was Poetreats, which I think...
Yes.
Yeah?
I think Poetry in Motion Pictures is good.
Okay. So here's my poetic review. If you want a TV series about reducing your clutter, the basics will no longer do it. The parsnips they will not butter. Fold your shorts, bin your junk clearly isn't enough. For today you really must invent a load of emotional stuff. Sniff your clothes and wait for joy, even if they're pants. Make this into a spiritual thing, pretend you're in a trance. So episode 1, I thought to myself, this isn't a bad show. The theatre, the advice, I enjoyed it all. I even gave it a go. It made me feel a little better that my cupboard is a mess, but I'm afraid as it dragged on, my interest was less and less. By episode 3, I'd had enough. I really didn't care. You've saved my life with your tips, Marie, was neither here nor there. But then, a couple of days passed, and something changed in me. I began to fold my clothes and stack them tidily. Now my T-shirts are folded up in drawers in little rows, although I draw the line in looking for joy with my nose. So I've embraced it as well, Rob. You should see my sock drawer. No, I haven't done socks yet. You should see my T-shirts, though. I mean, they are, wow.
Great. I mean, I'm not doing, I'll be honest with you, the folding part, I don't think that's a big thing.
That's the best bit.
Really? Oh, no, for me, it's just the sort of sheep and the goats thing, of like deciding whether something's good or not, sort of thing. I think it's ridiculous, frankly, the folding. Like, I don't honestly think that I could keep that up for my entire life. Who can keep it? Maybe Marie can, and her kids. But like, are you seriously suggesting to me that in 2 or 3 years' time you're going to be folding your clothes like that?
I sort of feel once you've done it, it's not much more effort to carry on.
But is it? Because obviously you wear the clothes, you unfold them, you put them on, you take them off, you put them in your laundry basket, you wash them. There's going to be a point at some point where you're going to stop folding them in that way.
We'll see. We'll come back to this.
Folding them in the specific Marie Kondo way, the Marie Kondo way.
Anyway, let's see. Because we only have one listener. Hi. We've got some reviews from IMDb to look at. We'll look at the best and the worst. So this is someone that is scathing. 1 out of 10. I was excited about it. Sorry, this is Horvath Zalan. I was excited about this show when I saw the previews. However, it falls flat on so many levels. I personally don't like that you have to rely on reading subtitles, but sometimes the interpreter talks over her. It just makes everything more confusing. There's not a whole lot of practical advice from her. She comes in, says hello, and pretty much leaves the family to do everything. The show is meh.
I must say that is actually quite a valid criticism, to be honest. I mean, the thing about, I think she probably, I'm guessing here, I think she probably does have just about good enough English to do the show completely in English, maybe. But I think that's part of it, is that they're kind of showing, and there is a question, isn't there, always with these kind of things, is how much is it? I mean, if they'd done this show in Japan, then I don't think it'd have the same effect. It's the fact that it's someone from Japan coming into America and sort of having, it's sort of that cultural exchange thing, isn't it? About whether it would even have that effect if it was just in Japan. I think it's partly that is part of the appeal of it.
Yes, it adds a bit of something, a bit of I don't want to say culture, but you know what I mean.
Without getting into the sort of like highfalutin academic discourse, there are questions of Orientalism. So basically, like exotifying someone from the East who's not a Western person. But at the same time, I'm sure that Marie Kondo probably has a lot of the same trappings of the Western society and ideas around Western society as anyone else in America. So, I don't think that's necessarily
Okay, well, I think we've cluttered up this discussion enough. I'm not going to go through all the positive ones, but the general feeling on IMDb was a pretty positive one. So this is now where I ask you, Rob, to have a guess, and I hope you've not been cheating about this. Have a guess at the IMDb score for tidying up with Marie Kondo.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of I think even though it is positive, I think there'll be some naysayers. So I'm going to go for 6.8.
I am just staggered at how good at this you are, Rob. 6.7. I can't believe how good you are.
Well, I mean, I kind of get the feeling from IMDb users of what kind of thing they're into, and they're probably less into that. It's quite skewed towards men rather than women, and women are probably more into this show than men, on average.
Let's move on before you dig yourself a great big hole. Let's talk about Fyre.
Yeah.
The greatest festival what's the title of it?
I think it's the greatest party that never happened, or it might be the greatest festival that never happened. Let's talk about that. So just the first thing to get out of the way. Okay, so it's about a festival that was an absolute disaster. It's ended up with the main festival, well, one of the main festival organisers, Billy McFarland, ending up with a 6-year jail sentence for fraud. Is that spoilers? Because that's the end of the film, basically. I think we can do spoilers for a documentary like this. The director is directed by Chris Smith. He directed a film called American Movie, which is about an independent horror film that goes disastrously wrong. So he's got a lot of previous with these kind of projects that are kind of filming in minute detail what went wrong with some major project. He also directed, interestingly, something called The Yes Men, which you might remember, which was sort of an excellent film on culture jamming. So it's anti-globalization activists opposing international organizations like the WTO. So it was a really influential film in sort of political circles, I think, during the mid-noughties. So the context is important for this because although the film is quite critical of McFarlane, because basically, he completely defrauds people, lies to people, including the people who are going to this festival. It does also use some talking heads from Fyre who have seemingly not learned very much. So a lot of the documentary is the people who were working for McFarland as this festival was going wrong. And they are simultaneously enlightening in the sense they give you a lot of information as you're going along, but also I found infuriating because they don't still seem to have grasped quite how massive the person they're working for was. And, it's going to be difficult for me, I'll be honest, Rob, to not swear during this review because I find the actions of the individuals in question so deplorable and despicable. So what happens is they market this festival to like high end users. People who think going on a yacht for a weekend is a normal thing, or they think it's like the thing to aspire to. So that's the kind of context, and they're marketing this festival in the Bahamas on a private island that used to be owned by Pablo Escobar, the drug lord, as this amazing experience, with supermodels, and the whole sort of toxic masculinity thing is writ large here. And obviously they just can't follow through with it. They don't know how. They've never organized a festival before. They don't know how to within the context of the Bahamas, where this is a small island with little electricity, and it will be very difficult to actually make it work. And that's what they find. People turn up and all hell breaks loose. I do find the documentary as a whole quite a compelling watch, just because it's like watching a car crash. Like anything like this, it is, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that they allowed this to happen. These, hundreds of people, schlepping it over to this island where effectively they were promised villa accommodation, and they were given these like effectively tents that might be used in a refugee camp. At the same time, I kind of feel like everyone involved in the film should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves. For instance, one of the people who's credited as a producer is Elliot Tebele, or I don't know how you say his name, Tebele. He has a production credit on this film, but he was one of the people who was involved with something called F-Fuck Jerry, which basically was involved with the Fyre Festival. So the filmmakers have kind of allowed certain people creative license within the production of this film.
So hang on. So some of the people the film was about made the film?
Yeah. Which I think is problematic for
documentaries. It's a bit, isn't it?
It's not as problematic perhaps for fictional films, but this is a documentary film. And actually that's why I say the context of the Yes Men, because that's an excellent sort of excellent example of documentary filmmaking. It's showing up power and privilege, whereas this seems to be trying to show up power and privilege, and how terrible and disastrous it can be, and what effect it can have on people. I mean, I think the most moving and most important part of the film was the fact that there was this woman in the Bahamas who basically had to open up her restaurant for everyone. She's never seen a penny for the effect it's had on her business and on her livelihood. And this is a guy who's running up millions and millions of pounds worth of costs and expenses. And so I just find, because the people are so loathsome, and the film was kind of made in conjunction with them, I just find it really difficult to appreciate it for what is actually a very well produced film. There's all that complication added onto it. I would actually recommend people watch it, but go in with a really skeptical mind, because it's not, even the stuff that you're seeing being portrayed, all the interviews, all the people that you're talking to may even be in on it. And even some of the people who have worked with this Billy McFarlane character are still not really rowing back on their association with him. They kind of think he's okay still, even though he's been tried.
I don't know. Quite a few of them were pretty harsh about him, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they were. So I suppose that's what I'm saying. It's balance, I suppose. There are people in the documentary who are very critical of him, but I don't think that those people have actually necessarily learned their lesson. I didn't feel from those people that they'd really got to grips with the idea that this kind of venture, this kind of like speculative, imaginary ethos that they're kind of selling, there's something intrinsically wrong with it. I think they kind of think, oh, well, it's just really bad management, when I think the whole thing is questionable.
Okay. So well, let's change the order around. The IMDb, the 1-star review.
Go.
The headline is lowest of the low. These people and this generation and the people who feed them are the lowest scum of all the scum on earth. They all look and sound the same. The bottom line is they all want kids' money, including the clowns who made this garbage. It's a boring movie for slackers who deserve what they got. Okay, I would say it's anything but boring. I mean, you can disagree with it, but it's not boring. I found it fascinating from start to finish. Okay, And this is the 10 out of 10 review. Dylan McChillan, good name. This documentary is very well made. As pointed out in other reviews, this one is far superior to the Hulu documentary. I haven't seen it. I appreciated all the interviews and background information. That being said, the host of the festival was made out to be a grade A D-bag and entitled, as were most of the festival goers. I think, as you said, Rob, it's basically this feeling of schadenfreude throughout, apart from a couple of sort of local characters who've clearly lost a lot of money and have been stitched up a bit. Apart from that, you do spend most of your time sort of enjoying the failure, really, which is a bit... You feel a little bit dirty about it. But right, here's my what did we decide it's called? Poetry and Motion Pictures.
Yes.
Okay.
We need a jingle.
It does need a jingle, doesn't it? I'll get on GarageBand or something and come up with something. I bought a sofa once. Bear with me. I bought a sofa once from a dodgy guy called Neil. It was a good price for what it was, and it had a lovely feel. Turned out he was a liar who ran off with my money. Stop sniggering at the back, Rob. £800 ain't funny. Oh, after a year, I called his girlfriend and told her what he'd done. The money miraculously appeared again, for I had ruined his fun. Yes, I was naive. I was a bit gullible too. But at least I didn't pay $5,000 to see Blink 182. Because that's what happens in this film about the festival called Fyre, with accusations flying around about Billy, who's called a liar. Supermodels, super yachts, and a weekend in paradise turned out to be something which wasn't quite so nice. I felt a little guilty that I watched this with such glee, but seeing Instagrammers in tears has a certain comedy. I'd have liked a little more footage of the festival itself. A few of the talking heads perhaps could have been left on the shelf. But otherwise, it's a cautionary tale of trying to be hip. What do you mean I sound like an old man? That's quite enough of your lip. So my feeling, there's a kind of apex of the film, and I won't talk about it too much, but basically it's the festival weekend. And that, for me, is the money shot. That's the most interesting bit, is just seeing people's jaws dropping and them sort of, they're all on a bus and they're just kind of going, oh, wow. And they are just, their reaction is priceless. I wanted more of the weekend, and I can't imagine there isn't a shortage of footage because these people film everything they do all the time. Yeah, so I was just surprised. I felt that could have been a bit.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think that might be to do with like legal stuff. I expect that they can't put loads of people's mobile phone footage like into a film. I mean, although they did use some of it.
I think people want the attention, don't they?
Well, you'd think, but then I don't know whether it needs special permission, anything like that. That's the only thing I can think of about why they didn't do that. Actually, you're completely right. That actually is an editorial decision, that the directorial decision that has been made. I would agree with that. And just to say on the Blink, the thing that made me laugh most actually was the Blink 182 cancellation. Like right at the last second when they said, "I don't think we're going to be able to like perform to our normal ability," and you're just like, okay. Yeah. I mean, overall, you've got to say it's a fascinating watch. I completely agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I completely concur that it needed just more absolute shock and horror of how it was like. They didn't show much of what happened within the tents when everyone had to kind of crowd around and, just basically make do amend. And it was, that people were saying it was like the Lord of the Flies. Well, I didn't really get that feeling that it was quite that desperate. It was pretty desperate, but not that desperate.
It was kind of like a sort of sick form common room. Maybe not Lord of the Flies, but it kind of descended to quite unpleasant behaviour within about 5 minutes, which was a bit bleak. So this is the bit where Rob guesses the IMDb score.
Do you know what? This is a tricky one because I think Netflix things tend to go up, and this will probably be a bit higher than the other one. So let's go 7.1.
7.3. I could do a sort of spread betting thing on this.
Yeah, I'm not bad at it. I'm
really good at this. All right. Next up is Close. Here's a clip.
The terms of your father's will are explicit, that you take an active role in the company.
The shares, how much are they worth?
We need to assign you a new close protection officer.
Am I supposed to know who you are?
Sam, nice to meet you.
Sam. You're great company.
So Close is stars Noomi Rapace, made famous by the girl with the dragon tattoo, the original Scandinavian versions of that film. It's directed by Vicky Jewson, who is both British and not a man, which is a novelty in both regards. Her first film was called Lady Godiva, which was not a literal recasting of the story of someone riding naked through Coventry, but was in that ballpark. So it's basically the story of a female bodyguard played by Noomi Rapace, and it's based on real events. So it's a real bodyguard who was someone who looked after famous people like J.K. Rowling, Nicole Kidman, and some of the British royal family. So there's an element of reality to it in that regard. It's one of those thrillers, sort of crime thrillers, that it seems to be trying something different, but in fact is very by numbers, I found. It's not going to bore you, but neither is it going to satisfy you. It kind of is, it keeps your attention for the entire running length. The story is basically that a wealthy family, the daughter of a wealthy family, is taken to the company that her late father owns, the country where that's based, which is Morocco. So she spends some time in a safe house in Casablanca. It doesn't remain safe, and things go from there. And Noomi Rapace has to step in and sort of protect her. I don't think there's anything wrong with the performances. There's nothing really to write home about any of them. But at the same time, there's some good location shooting. Some of the scenes in Casablanca itself are well done. So sort of racing through the city and that kind of thing. But I mean, I don't know about you, but every time I see an action thriller like this, I just think I could be watching The Bourne Ultimatum. It's not in that category.
Yeah, or Mission Impossible 6. I mean, that was kind of the peak of that sort of film, wasn't it, recently?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard for action films of this kind. It's trying to sort of have a level of depth. So that the depth here is sort of going into the mother-daughter relationship that neither Noomi Rapace's character nor this rich, wealthy daughter has had. They haven't had that relationship, and it's trying to get into that and show that they're having that relationship with each other. Quite a simple sort of conceit, I suppose, but I mean, it doesn't really need that depth. What I think it needed more of was better action sequences and sort of more sort of intricacy to its plot. It's pretty basic and doesn't really challenge. So if you've got an hour and a half in an evening and you just want to watch something to switch your mind off, it is quite a good one for that, I think. There's nothing terrible about it, but there's nothing brilliant about it either. So,
or turn the TV off and go for a walk.
Well, that is a good thing.
I really should have darned my socks rather than watch this rubbish. It starts quite well, but then settles in to a predictable, pedantic script that peters out into a corny ending. Do yourself a favour and try another movie. That's what Niall Ted Lynch reckons on IMDb. But Rafika, again, these people are not listening that we're aware of. I enjoyed this film from beginning to end. I expected it to become predictable. It took a number of unanticipated turns. Miss Noomi's performance was superb throughout. I particularly liked the underwater scene, as well as some of the landscapes along the way. The characters could have benefited from additional development, but overall, I found the movie thrilling to watch. Great brain teaser, 10 out of 10. I put myself somewhere in the middle of that, really, and I mean somewhere in the middle. I wouldn't give it a particularly high score, to be honest. So, Rob, what do you think the people of the 9,660 people of IMDb gave this as an average score?
I would think it would be 5.9.
Another very close, very good guess, Rob. 5.6.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep track of these scores. I think you've only been about 0.3 out so far.
I think there was one or two in the last one that I didn't quite get. You got a bit wrong, maybe.
Hey, Rob, I forgot my poem.
No, I was going to say, do you know what? I thought you'd started the poem when you were doing the
review. Okay, now the final line of this poem I'm very proud of. I was sitting on a train. I literally chuckled to myself. Okay? I thought of you. I love your laugh, Rob. And my aim in life, one of my aims in life, is to make you laugh.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And this is it. I felt so proud of myself. Well, what I want is a kind of laugh that shows respect at the same time. That's what I'm aiming for. Okay, here we go.
Okay, I can't do that. I mean, I won't second guess it. I'll do whatever my body.
Just coming up. Just be natural. Be cool.
Cool. Okay.
Close started with promise and action in the sand before drifting into something rather bland. A TV movie of a bodyguard with issues and a sad teenage billionaire. Someone passed the tissues. The acting was okay, but I didn't care enough about some dodgy business deal and a load of other stuff. Finally, a pun that, Rob, you will adore. Prepare, my friend, to pick your chin up from the floor. So here we go, the highlight of the show. This was close, but no Sicario.
Oh, that is good. That is very good. I cannot. Oh, how did you think of that?
It was a long train journey.
That's excellent.
To be honest, I thought of it whilst watching it, and that's how little of my attention it got.
It's not quite Sicario, is it? I mean,
no.
It's in the same kind of general area, but I mean, it's a good gag. It's a good gag.
Thank you.
Yeah. Move on. Carmen, right? Finally,
Carmen Sandiago. Okay, now this is going to be a real mess of a review because let's just get on with it and then I'll explain why. So, what did you think, Rob, of the new version of Carmen Sandiago?
So, Carmen Sandiago. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't really remember the original show that much, and I think we're going to have a conversation about this in a second, Rob, because I think you remember a certain version of it, and this was nothing like it. So it's produced by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, which sounds like a lawyer's firm or something. But they produce textbooks, of course. And the original game, a computer game, was made by the same people who made Prince of Persia and Myst. So I mean, this is the sort of ballpark we're talking about. It's a kids' sort of educational computer game influenced TV series, but based on the previous TV show, which had its last episode actually in 1999. So it's quite a long time, sort of a 20th anniversary origin story of Carmen Sandiago. And Carmen Sandiago is a character who basically travels the world trying to stop people in this evil organization called Vile. VILE, Villains International League of Evil. The acronyms are brilliant in Carmen Sandiago. And she's not only trying to stop them, she's also being chased by ACME, ACME, the Agency to Classify and Monitor Evildoers. I tell you, these are brilliant acronyms. So there's this kind of triple chase, and it is a chase because the person who works for ACME, Interpol, is called Chase Devino. And Carmen Sandiago is ably abetted by Player, just literally called Player, and also in the second and third, from the third episode onwards, by Ivy and Zach, who are this kind of brother and sister duo from Boston, which is kind of introduced very randomly, but effectively it's really well animated. A lot of it's basically all action. It's Carmen trying to get away from people, or trying to find some treasure, or basically being introduced to a new culture. And it attempts to kind of educate as it goes along. So there's little bits where Player, who's this kind of remote hacker type character, presumably in America, who leads Carmen away from things or towards things using GPS and things like that. And also provides like geographical knowledge. So he'll explain where Indonesia is, how many people live there, what the main cities are, what it does, that kind of thing. So it's an attempt to kind of educate people, young people particularly, in where things are. I really enjoyed, I watched, I think, 4 episodes of this. I would normally only watch 2 or 3, and I wanted to keep watching. Now, I probably wouldn't keep watching, but the point is that I found a lot to like about this. It's quite witty. A lot of the characterization is quite well handled and well drawn, and the voice acting is really excellent. The person who plays Player has been in Stranger Things, and the what's it called? Stephen King's It from a couple of years ago. So he's like a well-known.
It's called It, Rob.
Sorry,
it's called It.
It. Yeah, but it's called Stephen King's It, I believe.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. But I think as a whole, it works really well as an attempt to show a little bit of geographical, educational sort of role, which is what I understand the original program was doing. But it also has a kind of fast-paced action adventure style. I think if I was a kid, I would want to watch it. I don't think there's anything incredibly flashy about the way it's animated, but it held my attention, and I'm 35, so I would probably get bored of a normal cartoon. So I would give it a thumbs up. Yeah.
This has really baffled me, this one, right? The reason I wanted to watch this is that I got very nostalgic and remembered me and my brother singing "Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiago?" Right, we used to sing that a lot. But you sent me a clip. Right, for a start, that song wasn't on the program that I watched, so I was a bit disappointed. And then you sent me a clip earlier of something called "Where in the World is Carmen Sandiago," which doesn't fit the song.
Well, sorry, what's your song? How'd your song?
I thought it was "Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiago."
It's kind of interchangeable, isn't it?
But the program you sent me was completely different to the one I remember. I remember a live action cartoon of someone in a hat running around the world.
Yeah.
The one you sent me was a load of kids on like a game show.
Yeah.
Where in the world? I don't know what I was watching. I think I've merged together two programs and made up my own brilliant program, my own brilliant memory. It didn't actually happen.
But the other thing it always reminds me of is Willy Fogg. So sort of Around the World in 80 Days, the cartoon version. 80 Days Around the World.
Similar to that, isn't it?
Just kind of racing against time and against the villainous people, and then trying to find different things. I like that as an idea. I think that's a really good concept for a kids' TV show, because lots of kids haven't been to other countries and they're kind of like amazed by it. Like the Cities of Gold as well. That was the other one in the 90s and 80s, wasn't it? Someday we will find the cities of gold. Do you remember that? No, you don't.
I don't remember it based on what you've just done, but but I do sort of remember the title. Okay, my 8-year-old, and I love this. Strong female characters, strong male characters, great writing, funny, action-packed, and with great ethics and morals without ramming it down your throat or being too preachy. That was the 10 out of 10 review.
Sorry, that was your 8-year-old?
No, not my 8-year-old. That was someone on IMDb.
Okay, sorry.
Whereas one guy says, "This show makes no sense. It was an obvious attempt to try and get a kids show idea and try to make it less kiddish. Sure, they try and add a few chuckle jokes, but they're not funny at all. The jokes literally made me want to die." I mean, I don't know where to start with that.
That's a bit
Just switch it off, son. Just switch it off. If you don't like it that much, switch it off.
I thought the jokes were pretty good. I thought they weren't like all the way through it, but they were littered, here and there, and I thought they worked quite well.
It's a kids show. There's a limit. You can't fit it with effing and jeffing, can you? For a laugh. No. Okay, I've written a brief poem about this one.
Okay.
I think I've made a mistake which really is quite big. I've indulged in too much CBeebies and also Peppa Pig. I've trained my mind to wander whenever I see a cartoon, Go Jetters, Dora the Explorer, or the new one with the moon. So after watching this prequel to Carmen Sandiego, could I tell you what happened? I'll be honest, no. And that's my problem, Rob. I could see it was brilliant. The animation I thought was very good. It looked like a really good computer game, like a really good adventure computer game. I could tell it was well done. It seemed quite exciting. It just didn't engage me at all. I sort of struggled through the first episode, and I don't think that's a problem with it. I think that's a problem with me, and my mind just switches off now whenever I see a cartoon, because I just think, oh, it's another episode of some children's thing, and I need to get beyond that. So I think it's a good program, but just maybe not for me.
Yeah. What's the one with the moon then? The new one? You said there was a new one.
It's called The Moon and Me. So CBeebies, this is quite niche now. CBeebies have changed their nighttime schedule, which is, as you'll know, quite a controversial thing to do. But they basically extended the nighttime schedule, so it starts at 5:45 rather than at 6. And they've put it on with a new program about some people living near the moon. Seems to be the general idea.
Living near the moon, but not on the moon.
I always think, though, chit chat about children generally and kids' TV, that, you know, modern kids' TV. If you've got kids, you know it already. If you haven't got kids, you don't care, do you?
I think that's absolutely the case. Yeah, I don't know why I asked you that question, really, because I didn't care about the answer.
Right, so Carmen Sandiago on IMDb, 1,153 reviews.
Wow.
Let's see if you can keep up your staggeringly good guesses.
I'm struggling with this one because it is a kids' show, and I think most of the IMDb users won't be kids for obvious reasons. So I'm going to say 6.1.
You are well out. You've completely undone all your good work. 8.1.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Glad about that. I'm glad that basically the jocks of IMDb are on board with Carmen Sandiago, because I think it's quite it's sort of subtly sort of interesting idea that this young girl can go around the world, meet lots of people, and win the day.
So, Rob, this is a new feature I've just made up.
Okay, cool.
Our highlight of the month out of those four. Which would you like to? Well, which would you erase from your memory, and which would you like to praise as your? Okay,
well, I'll be if you're couching it in those terms, I would definitely erase Fyre, just because I think everyone involved with Fyre, either the good people or the bad people, would want to erase that from their memory, the whole experience of it. But it's not the worst thing. The worst thing this month was Close, I think, unfortunately. And I'd definitely go for, Carmen Sandiago. It is, I think. I preferred that to Tidying Up, because I think, as you've rightly said, Tidying Up has a shelf life.
Hey, there it is. So, Rob, all that remains is for us to look at what we're going to discuss next time. What are the films and programs for next time?
Well, we've got a couple of series. We're going to go with Dirty John. We're going to go with Dating Around as our series, and we're going to watch the films Breaker Uppers and The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Okay, thanks to our production team, Brian, who does our makeup and hair for the podcast. Thanks to Eileen, who does audio mixing. Great job, Eileen, once again. And thanks to both of you, all three of you maybe, for listening. Goodbye. Bye.